Welcome to the first episode of the Underworld podcast. My name is Sam and I'm your host. And for the first episode, I want to tell you the story of how this podcast came to be. And I'm going to go all the way back to a little bit of my childhood. I grew up as a fundamentalist Christian, specifically Church of Christ. I was born into the church and raised into the church. And I made the decision to leave when I was about 20 years old. And it was a confusing time. I was atheist for about a year. And then I randomly, or maybe not so randomly, decided to dabble in witchcraft for a few months. And I had a few experiences in my meditation and some of the things that I was doing when I really didn't know what I was doing at all, that really changed the way I viewed the world in a subtle way, but it really changed just how I viewed what was possible within the world and our experiences on Earth. And so I wasn't an atheist anymore, and I leaned more agnostic. And also, I happened to evoke Lilith, but that's a story for another time. It's a funny story, though. Now it's funny. But so anyway, I was agnostic, and I just kind of hung out there for a little bit. I was comfortable there, and I wanted to dive deeper, but I didn't feel I was in a great place personally, and also just in life. I was in college. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, who I wanted to be, and it was a tumultuous time. But eventually I graduated and I settled into my career. And I have worked in the medical field since 2018, and I'm currently studying to take on a larger role in the mental health field and in psychiatry. So I could say that I've definitely figured out my place, at least within my career, and just the calling I was feeling towards psychology and psychiatry and mental health. So I'm very pleased with where I'm at right now. But for a long time, after I got my career figured out and all of these things, I just look back and I really see I was driven by such a defined dissatisfaction, and that just kept pushing me along, where I just felt like the life that I was experiencing, there was so much more. There's so much more that could be tapped into and drawn out and worked with. And I look back and I'm like, you're a witch, honey. You're a witch. But at that time, I didn't have the labels or words for it. And so I just kind of kept trying things. And that's all you can really do when you know that you want something more out of life, is to keep trying and keep pursuing that, never giving up on that. And that to me is divine dissatisfaction. And so I started out as a Wiccan in 2020, and I was a Wiccan for about a year, which is a pretty clear or just natural transition, in my opinion. When you grow up fundamentalist Christian, the things that Wicca teaches, and their Wiccan breed and the rule of three and all of that, it seems like a very natural transition, where if an ex-fundamentalist Christian were going to be a witch or practice anything within the realm of witchcraft, it would be the Wiccan religion. And so I did that for about a year, and I learned a lot from Wicca. I really love my time as a Wiccan. I look back on that time fondly. But eventually I got to a point where I just felt like, I don't really want these boundaries. And when I say that, I just mean someone telling me, you can't do this type of magic. You can only do this type of magic. You can't connect with these energies or spirits. You can only connect with these approved energies or spirits. And I really took a look inside myself and I said, I don't want to be constrained. If I'm going to do this, if I'm going to go all the way, I need to not have any constraints, and I want to see where I end up. So I had a somewhat difficult time transitioning out of my Wiccan, mindset, because that's still challenging a lot of the uh, doctrine that I was raised up with and well, just brainwashed by growing up. So through my journey, I've had to face a lot of my fear head on as far as challenging those principles and beliefs of heaven versus hell, good versus evil, very black and white concepts. So I was just beginning to start to tackle that. And um, I really explored what it was like to become a neo pagan. I spent a lot of time just trying to explore what experiences was I even having. Because when I was raised, the way I was raised, Church of Christ, fundamentalist, Protestant Christian, um, that it was very regimented in the experiences that you could have. And even if you were to have an experience, a spiritual experience, the church and the teachers would interpret the experience for you and sort of tell you what you experience instead of being able to process that on your own. So that was very different and new for me to kind of have myself to rely on and lean on for what I was going through, what was happening, and the meaning I wanted to take away from that. And so after all of that, coming to the present day, I have been a witch since 2020. So I truly feel like I've found my place. All that searching really did pay off, not without hardship and heartache, which I will get into very soon. So, to anyone who's going through this journey, this experience, you're not alone. Keep going, don't give up. And when you feel the path that you really that is meant for you and aligns with everything inside of you and your own natural beliefs, you don't have to bend or shape or remold yourself to fit into any other set of beliefs. That's when you know that something is for you. And a lot of times it may not be a formal religion or doctrine or set of beliefs. Sometimes you just make up your own place in the world. And you're welcome to join all of us witches in all of our outcast corners of the world. But anyway, so I finally found the place that I had been searching for so long, and I now consider myself a Hecatean witch. I am devoted to Hekate. That is such a big part of my spiritual path. And it's interesting, when I look back over my life, I can see she had a hand in my life that whole time, that dissatisfaction that I was feeling. It was almost like she was calling me slowly back to her over a number of years, and in so many experiences that I had, and how nothing ever seemed to click until I found her or she found me, or the timing was right. I'm not really sure what to make of it, but it's like I was in a constant spiral towards her. And I'm her devotee. And our formal relationship started in 2023. And I, the way I view it is I was finally ready for her. And I was finally at a place in my life where she could come to me and I wouldn't immediately reject her or turn her away because of my brainwashing and my indoctrination. And so I came to a point in my journey, and this was in 2023, where I really was able to receive her call. And she gave me 3 dreams, 3 nights in a row. The first night, I dreamt of this drawing of a cloaked figure that was faceless. And there was a person in the dream pointing to this drawing of her that seemed more than 2D, and there was immense power emanating from this. And this person was pointing at this drawing saying, "That is Hekate." And I woke up and I was like, what just happened? Because I had never had something like that happen before. And so I was like, okay, I've clearly got to pay attention to this, because this is something I've never experienced before. And but of course that day I was like, okay, that was a little weird, but let me sleep on it. So I went to bed again that next night, and I dreamt of a key made out of wood. And again, that dream was short, sweet. I woke up and I researched more about Hecate, and I found out that she is very tied to plants and nature, and she is also, one of her symbols is a key. So I was like, okay, the weirdness is building. And later that day, I was researching her symbols, her history, as much as I could in one day. I mean, there's a lot there. But my husband and I happened to go to the mall, and I came upon this corner that was lined with torches, and there were 2 statues of black dogs. And I stopped fully in my tracks. And I mean, it was overwhelming. And that sudden moment you have where you're just hit with a sign, it is overwhelming. And I said, okay, I've really got to pay attention now. She wants something from me. And by the way, I had never seen torches line the exterior wall of a jewelry store in the middle of a mall before, with 2 black dog statues, and I've never seen it again. I have never seen it again. And so I get home and I just talk to her and I say, okay, I'm listening. You have my attention. What work is it that you want to do with me? What do you want with me? Because up until that time, I was not investigating deities like Hecate. I was more involved with deities that were Oronic, heavenly, more focused on lovey-dovey feelings, love and light, love and light feelings, because I felt safe in that. And here, this completely different goddess was coming out of the woodwork that I never would have really thought would have given me the time of day. But here she was sending me the most signs and the clearest signs that I have ever received. And so before I went to bed that night, I asked her what she wants from me, and she gave a response. That night, I dreamt of being gifted a wishing well, but it came with a task, and I was charged with the task of going down inside of that wishing well. And so I jumped to the bottom of the wishing well, and there was a whole different world in the wishing well. And immediately I saw thick forest with trees and a bright full moon, and that was the only light in that realm inside the wishing well. And immediately I was scared. I became scared and I wanted to get out. And I was afraid. I was afraid of the dark. I was afraid of the unknown. I was afraid of what could be hiding in there. But something in me found courage, and something in me gained the courage to just take one step forward. And so that's what I did. I took a step forward and I took a few more, and suddenly I could start to see, my eyes adjusted, and I could start to see some things in the darkness. And I saw that there was a path, and there were trees, and there was the beautiful moon. And so I was like, I'm just gonna start walking down this path. And so I actually ended up meeting it. You know how dreams are in their vague way, their dream-like way, where there are not too many details. Sometimes it can skim over things. And so I actually met several spirits that became my friends in the wishing well, and I ended up loving the world in the wishing well more than I really loved the world I had come from. And I ended up feeling so welcome and comfortable there. And I heard a voice that said, "You are here to spread your love and light just by being you. That is your purpose." And I immediately woke up. And I know love and light is cringy, but that's what I heard. And so, I mean, that's what I heard. And that was probably the most profound dream I've ever had. I hardly, I dream, I am a dreamer, but that dream was just something unlike I had ever really experienced. And I think about that dream often, especially as time has passed and other things have come to pass and make a little bit more sense. I feel like the dream has taken on even more meaning as I go through my life. And after I woke up from that dream, I said, "Holy shit. Let's fucking do this." It was like everything that I had wanted from life. I wanted a place of belonging. I wanted a place where I could call my own. And I think for a lot of us witches, there's not really a whole lot of places in this living 3D earthly realm that we really feel like we fit in. And I don't want to speak for everyone, but what's true for me is I really do feel as I've gone on that places in spirit are more my home than places in physical reality. And so I answered the call of this amazing dark goddess, and she led me to study her history, her ways of traditionally honoring her, a little bit of Hellenic polytheism. And it was really the most I had invested into any other goddess. And still to this day, the energy I've invested in Hekate is the most that I've invested in any deity. And I have really grown a liking for history through this. And so, yeah, I really dug deep into all the information that was out there about her. And I'm still learning to this day. I don't know everything. she is she is such an amazing goddess that I still don't know everything there is to know. I'm still learning new things about her. So I answered her call, and immediately my whole life began to change. And at the time, I was a travel nurse, and I was able to move. I completely moved states. Me and my husband, we moved states, and um, we moved away from our hometown, and now we live in a state that we love and is so beautiful. And the stability that has appeared in my life from that move has been so valuable to me. It was what I needed at the time, absolutely. And she kept asking for more from me. She gave me the idea just fell into my head one day while I was at work to go back to school and to take on more of a leader role in the psychiatric and mental health field, which is the field I've always wanted to work in. And it just so happened that my workplace was offering school assistance, and very good school assistance at that. And so that was I took it as Hecate was lighting the way, and I was following it. And so I began school, and she also called me to ancestor veneration, looking into that, looking into different types of folk magic that really helped me understand witchcraft and what really the history that goes into the witchcraft. And she's also led me to traditional witchcraft and reading about the history of the witch trials and things like that. I mean, she's taught me so much and changed and advanced my craft so much. Words almost can't even describe how she has contributed to my life. And so all of this it takes a lot of work, and it's not easy, and she asks a lot. And eventually she asked me to start to confront the conditioning of the Christian beliefs and the Protestantism that I grew up with. And that's where things got very difficult for me. Because I was 20 years within this, born and raised. I mean, those aren't gonna go away overnight or even after a few years. This is almost a life's work of cleansing myself of these things that were so deeply ingrained in me in those prominent years of growing up as a child. And that is all you know, that is your world. And she was asking me to tear all of it down. So I renounced my baptism, and I look upon that so fondly. And that's all I'll say about that for now. I think I will go more into that in a different episode, but for now, I'm going to leave it at that. And then she did something that I would never personally choose at that time. She challenged me to look into demonolatry and to start working with quote unquote demons. That really threw me for a loop, but I trusted her and I walked forward even with my fear, and I knew that she was protecting me, but still, that I don't want to downplay how difficult that was for me. And I had some frightening experiences from that. And I think there is a lot to be said for doing things that you are afraid of and feeling that fear and asking yourself where that fear is coming from. And that's what she was really asking me to do. And I had to dig deep into myself and excavate the fears and the beliefs that those fears were tied to. And I had to pick those apart and examine them and discard them. But she still wanted more from me. And when she was ready, she pulled away completely. At least that was my perception at the time. I now know that she is the worker from afar. And she's never completely gone. But in my perception at the time, I thought she left me, abandoned me, discarded me. When I had done so much for her, and I had really just been in the trenches for her. And I felt abandoned, and everything stopped. Everything. The spirit communication, my knowingness on my path, my clarity, it all melted away into disillusionment, confusion, fear, grief. And then after that, 2 weeks later, I started getting physical symptoms. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I felt like I was lightheaded and dizzy, and I felt my lungs were inflamed. And I went to the doctor and I got x-rays, I got inhalers, I had tests done. Nothing was showing on the tests. And I feared for my life because I had no idea what was going on, except for I felt like I could not breathe. My lungs were inflamed. I had to be on inhaled steroids for my lungs just to be able to feel like I could breathe. I felt at night that I was going to fall asleep and not wake up because of the state that my lungs were in, and no one had any answers for me. And I had to take time off of work. I had to be on medical leave. I was essentially bedridden. And I was driven to my absolute darkest and lowest that I have ever been in my life. I felt completely disabled and I saw no way out. And then, as time went on, and this took about 2 months, it was at its peak for about 2 months. And then the third month, I began to develop food sensitivities out of nowhere, and I got hives on my body, my lips and tongue and eyelids were swelling in response to certain foods. Again, tests were run and nothing was shown. And I really was in a dark place. And that time in my life really changed me because I saw how bad life could get and how lonely someone could feel and how hopeless life could really be. And I didn't know what else to do. And so I just kept going. I kept living every single day without knowing if I would ever get better or not, or what my life would look like in the future. And my psyche during this time completely broke because of the stress that I was under. And I got to the point where I was having a nervous breakdown, and I told myself that I need to get help. Nobody in the medical field was helping me. Nobody knew what was going on. I need to get help. I need to get evaluated psychiatrically. And so I did. I went in and I got a psychiatric evaluation. And that was one of the most important things I could have ever done for myself. And I was diagnosed with PTSD. And I was able to be referred to an outpatient psychiatrist to just get some help. Finally, get some help from someone. And I was put on SSRIs just based on my diagnosis of PTSD. And I did explain a little bit of the things I had gone through, and it even confused the psychiatrist. So, and I got on my SSRI and it started to kick in. And I went from having multiple panic attacks a day about my health, every night feeling like I was going to sleep and not wake up, every day fearing for my life because someone had told me that I had asthma when I didn't, and fearing an asthma attack. I went to finally stabilizing, finally, after 3 months of absolute hell. And as I stabilized on the SSRI, I was able to get through the rest of what was happening to my body. It was not easy. It was not. The effects, the physical effects I had lingered for quite some time, and I had to rebuild my strength from being bedridden. I had to rebuild my function, just a daily function. And I had to rebuild my mental health. And to this day, I still have food intolerances that have never really been explained, and they come and go. There's no real pattern. And so I still live with that, but it's nothing compared to what it was. So I have had some improvement on that end. But I truly felt like I had walked through the underworld and I had survived. I survived. And I truly felt as I recovered that I was completely changed. And as I recovered, I regained my faith in the unseen. And I regained function in every aspect of my life. I achieved a higher level than I had ever had before with the help of medication, psychiatric medication. I went from being to one of the lowest points I had ever been in my entire life to regaining more function than I had ever had in my life over time. And I know it's probably weird to hear me say, but I am actually so grateful for that time that I spent in that place, wherever I was. I view it as being in the underworld. It has made me such a strong person. It has shown me what a bad day truly is. It has shown me that I really can keep going even when everything in my life is falling apart. And that is a confidence in myself that no one can take away. And I truly believe that Hekate gave me that. She shepherded me through the underworld, and I made it out alive. And I am the witch I am today because of that experience. Because when you lose all of your faith and all of your hope, only to come out of that experience and see that it was all for a reason, it strengthens your belief in the unseen in a way that I can't describe. And I have only been able to receive better and better medical care for my PTSD since that time. And after that, I even, pursued EMDR and therapy. And I had been in therapy before, but it hadn't been quite as effective as I would have liked it to be. And I found a great therapist after I got back on my feet with everything, and I was able to do 7 months of EMDR. I did 7 months of EMDR, which also is its own form of hell and underworld and horrific. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. EMDR is horrible. But I did that, and I am a completely different person. I'm completely changed from that experience also. I have truly faced the demons in my life, and I have stared them down, and I've told them to fuck off. And, of course, I think when you are someone with trauma who grew up with every kind of abuse and trauma, I don't think that ever really leaves you, but you can face those things head on, and you can tell them to get the fuck out of your life. And I think that you can be changed by that. And so I am so grateful. I know now that Hekate drug me kicking and screaming through this amazing transformation and change that needed to take place in my life, because now I know who I am, I know who I want, and I know how to get what I want. And I know who is for me and who is not for me. And I am grateful for everything that I have been through. I have more gratitude for every day. And I know now, after going through all of that, that my spiritual practice is completely mine. There is no dogma or doctrine or brainwashed concept that is in me that is still controlling me. I know that is gone now. And she is always here guiding me through what I need most. And I am more stable than I've ever been. And she let me, her working from afar really continued for quite some time. She is not a goddess who will care if you fall down and you hurt yourself and all of these things. She will let you pick yourself back up and keep going without anything from her. And that is exactly what she did for me. I picked myself up off of the lowest point I've been in my life, and I brushed myself off, and I got myself help. And I got out of that. I journeyed with myself through the underworld as she was working from afar. And I continued like that for quite some time. And I slowly integrated my spirituality back into my life after such a traumatic experience. I went slow. I went and I did what I was comfortable with. And I took my sweet time. And Hekate has come back into my life after I spent a lot of time researching, experiencing, studying quite a few different pagan religions and different traditions within magic and witchcraft. And I have finally found a place that I feel so good within my witchcraft practice. And Hekate has come back full force into my life and said, and just basically told me that everything that I've been through was to refine me and prepare me for the next step I'm making in my career to help others, and for teaching people through this podcast and just talking about concepts and being a Hekate devotee and living, breathing, grounding that reality in my life and grounding her as a reality in my life. And so that is how this podcast came to be, because this is what she wants me to do. And everything I talk about on this podcast and all the experiences I share, I always get permission from the spirits that I work with and from Hekate that I am, able to talk about these experiences on a public space. And I truly believe that the people who are drawn and will get, value out of this podcast will find this podcast. And I really do think the Underworld podcast is for you if you would like to learn about witchcraft concepts from someone like me. If you just heard my story and you relate to it and you feel moved by it, or really just, I truly feel if you relate to my story at all, maybe you would like to learn about witchcraft from someone like me. And also, I do think this podcast is for those of you who feel drawn towards Hekate. I think you would get a lot of value out of this. And if you feel like you are journeying through your own underworld, because those are the people that I work with in the medical field, and in my new role I will be transitioning to, I am going to be working with and have worked with people who are going through difficult times. And I can't wait to share more about my experiences. I can't wait to, there's so many ideas for episodes that I have. And if you listen to this whole episode, thank you so much. Please let me know how you feel about this episode. If you have any experiences with Hekate you would like to share, or any thoughts about this episode, or any questions, please submit them to my email, uworldpodcast@gmail.com, and that is the letter U and WORLD podcast@gmail.com. And you can also find me on Instagram as Underworld Woman. That is my handle on there. And thank you so much for listening. Hail Hekate, and I hope to see you in the next episode.